Let me call the Berkeley City Planning Commission to order for its regular meeting of Tuesday, May the 26th, 2016. Would you all please rise for the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, and could I have a roll call vote, please? Or
Murad?
roll call. Here.
Buckler? Here. Tangari?
Here.
Pop? Here. Shadle?
Here.
Richardson?
Here.
Morrell?
Here.
Smith?
Here.
Barnett?
Present. Now I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda for this evening.
Mr. Chairman, so moved.
Moved by Commissioner Morrell, seconded. Supported by Commissioner Moret. Is there any discussion on the agenda this evening? Hearing none, we'll take a roll call vote, please.
Smith?
Yes.
Buckler?
Yes.
Tangari?
Yes.
Pop?
Yes.
Shadle?
Yes.
Richardson?
Yes.
Morrell?
Yes.
Murad?
Yes.
Barnett?
Yes. Now entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the April 28th regular meeting of the Berkeley City Planning Commission. Moved by Commissioner Martin Smith. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Commissioner Pop. Is there any discussion on the minutes? Hearing none, we'll take a roll call vote.
Shadle?
Yes.
Richardson?
Yes.
Buckler?
Yes.
Murad?
Yes.
Morrell?
Yes.
Tangari?
Yes.
Pop?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
Barnett?
Yes. Now entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the May 12th, 2015 work session meeting.
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Murad. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Shadle. Is there any discussion on these minutes? Hearing none, I'll take a roll call vote, please.
Richardson?
Yes.
Morrell?
Yes.
Murad?
Yes.
Tangari?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
Shadle?
Yes.
Pop?
Yes.
Buckler?
Yes.
Barnett?
Yes. Communications.
No, I don't think
No
you do.
communications. Now I entertain citizens' comments. Any citizen who would care to address the Planning Commission on any topic not on our agenda may do so at this time. You stand up, come up to the podium and state your name and city of residence. Citizens will have an opportunity to participate in discussions as we move through our meeting tonight, and there's also a citizens' comment section later on towards the end of our meeting. Seeing no citizens rushing up to the microphone, I guess we'll move right on into the order of business.
Item number 1 is rezoning RZ0115 Hartfield Realty regarding parcel number 2507451-046, east side of Buckingham between 12 Mile and Edwards, north half of lot 148 of the Cottage Home subdivision, is requesting a rezoning from parking district to single-family residential R1D.
Is the petitioner here? Would the petitioner please step up to the podium?
We all are.
You're not
A
alone.
little slippery too. I didn't
Okay.
expect this. Hello.
We're all a little damp here tonight.
Yeah.
So. Would you care to give us a little background on what you're asking?
Well, Hartfield Lanes, obviously we have a very big parking lot, and across the street there's one single lot. Apparently back in the 70s, my father-in-law, Harry Hartfield, bought out a lot of lots. There is a home directly behind it. We have not used it. It's been chained off for about 12 years. It is somewhat of a hardship for us because it looks horrible, and it needs a lot of work. And last year, I was checking in with Amy to have it changed over last year, and I got a lot of talk from the DDA wanted to buy it, and then they never made me an offer, was the bottom line. So what we'd like to do is we'd like to rezone it back to its original, which was residential. There is, like I said before, there's a home right behind it. It's all by itself. It's not connected to Hartfield Lanes. I don't know if you have a map or whatever. You do? Okay. So it's all by itself. There's a house right behind it, and there is a parking all next to it. We'd like to make it residential and build a home there. So that's what so I waited a year because I didn't want to waste the $500 and was trying to work with the I forgot her name. Help me, Amy.
The city manager?
The city manager, and nothing came forward with nothing, no offers, no nothing. So anyways, now we're looking at building a home. We think it's going to help the streets a lot because there's been quite a few homes built on that street, and it's actually going to look a lot better, and it's not like one house out from another. There's going to be directly a house behind it. So I think it's going to, and I believe that we're going to build and have a house, and my son is going to buy that from us. So that's where we're at right now.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
See, we were going to have a public hearing.
Correct.
So I think what I'm going to do, normally I go through the planning commission, but I think I want to hear the residents first. So I think we'll open the public hearing and conduct the public hearing. You can have a seat if you want. And any citizens who would care to address this issue, if they would step up to the microphone, state your name, city of residence, you may do so at this point. Interesting. It looks like I don't have anybody rushing to the microphone
Do
again.
not.
Yet again.
So I guess I will close the public hearing. And at this time, I will turn to the planning commission for their comments and what is the desire of this.
Mr. Chair,
Mr.
I have a question for
Tan
Ms.
Gary.
Hanson.
Go ahead.
Typically, when you have a parking lot or commercial property adjacent to residential, there's a requirement for a screen wall.
Yes.
Whose responsibility is that screen wall if a home is put up on this lot?
Ms. Hartfield's aware, the building officials already talked to her that a wall would be required. It doesn't say who's responsible, it just says a wall needs to be there.
Gotcha.
So a wall would be required.
Other comments? Mr. Murad.
That was the same question I had. So normally, in these situations, the wall is built on the parking lot property,
Because that's the thing that's being
Oh.
built, yeah.
you know, so.
The houses predate the parking lot typically, yes.
Yeah. So in this case, will it be built on the residential lot? Because they're the ones,
She's not gonna be able to build on somebody else's property, so, yeah.
okay, all right.
Other comments?
Question.
Ms. Shado?
Mr. Chair, a question for the petitioner as far as the current wall that exists on the north side of the property. Is the intent then for that wall to be demoed, or what's the intent for the current wall?
No, up to the microphone,
People on
please.
TV wanna hear you.
We got TV going here tonight, so.
I think we talked a little bit about it, and it could be either or, I guess, at this point. There is a wall up next to, I know the people that live there, so there is a wall there now, and I guess it's up for discussion. The
The wall's
cost
not
factor, I mean, on both sides, I mean, I guess if we had to tear it down, we would tear it down.
But your intent is for it to remain?
Well, I guess I haven't thought that far ahead of the game, to be honest with you. I'm not pleased with the wall. I mean, I don't like it, but maybe we could make it look more uniform at this point. So that's the only thing I know. But no, I'm willing to do, what we have to do, so to make it go back to a residential lot. So, okay?
Thank you.
Thanks.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Tangari?
In general, I would say that a wall of that nature probably doesn't really fit the residential character of a neighborhood, so it probably is going to come down one way or another. I'll just say in general, I drove past the lot on the way here. It's asphalt with some grass poking through. I think it's certainly an extension southward of the residential district, and the current lot is maintained to the extent that it's probably going to be maintained, given that it's not in use. So my general impression is that this rezoning would probably constitute an improvement to the situation of the lot. One of my questions was, what's the market for a home built in this location? And the applicant spoke to that, at least initially, because she believes that her son is probably the likely occupant. So most of my questions have been laid to rest.
Ms. Buckler?
I think it's a good idea. I think it's just currently an eyesore. I drove by it as well, and I think it would be a good change.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Martin Smith?
Amy, for the record, do we have, obviously this parking lot hasn't been used in a while, but is there a shortage of parking in this part of town? I know that's a loaded question, let me just say, if the city were to, I'm assuming it's 40 by 100 feet, I don't know what it is. If the city would lose the potential, because this is 180 degrees from what we normally do. In all the years I've been on here, we've never gone this direction. It's always the other way, and they're very difficult decisions to make, as we've all discussed. If the city were to lose a potential 9 or 10, 8 to 10 spaces, not knowing what the future is, of course, which makes it an easier question to answer, is there a shortage of parking in this area?
At the current moment, no.
Okay. Thank you.
Other comments? Mr. Richardson?
I also drove by the lot. I am assuming that the lot is probably too small for another kind of use, but I would just ask if any consideration has been given to some kind of mixed-use zoning there for, say, a business with a loft upstairs or a residential upstairs, or perhaps a duplex, something of that sort. Is that a suitable site for such a development?
I don't think you'd want a business use on Buckingham. A duplex is, right now, the only zoning that would allow that is an R2 zone. I think we have one lot that's zoned R2 in the whole city. It didn't really take off the way, I'm not sure whoever, I don't know if it's like from 1960, but I think we had 2 lots in the city when I started in 96, and now we're down to 1. So duplex is a possibility. The applicants, we don't, other than R2, we don't have a thriving R2 district anyplace. So the applicant is seeking to use it as a single-family home. She did approach the city as far as whether we would be interested in buying it to create additional municipal parking. The DDA was approached. There was not interest at that particular time, and so it's not being used, and certainly, as I indicated in my report, it's a chicken and egg thing, right? As soon as one business comes in and suddenly needs the parking, then all of a sudden, oh, I wish we had done that. But, there was not interest to pursue it at that point. And as she stated, it's not contiguous to the bowling alley property. It's across the street.
Would you have any reason, I'm sorry, would you have any reason to think that rezoning it to residential would be incompatible with the master plan?
No.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Martin Smith?
To the east of there is an alley with a row of parking. Well, I don't know if it's really an alley, that's what I'm asking. The properties to the east have a drive with parking behind them.
Yes.
Is that a public or is that all private?
The parking is private.
Okay, so the drive is probably private property also. It wouldn't be
The drive is public.
Really?
It was, yeah.
It's an alley?
But the
because I like alleys.
alley. It was not platted as an alley. It wasn't platted as an alley, but what the
Okay.
city did was there's 20 feet of lots X and Y, let's say, that is owned by the city of Berkley.
The reason I ask is if we were tonight to say, no, you can't rezone it, someone could put a bigger structure, building on that corner lot, but that would dead end that alley, that drive. Someone could go back farther and still have this 40 feet for parking. You don't understand what I'm saying?
No, because the city owns it. It's not, it wasn't
But they
platted
wouldn't
as an
be able
alley.
to, yeah.
Correct,
Okay,
right.
okay. So
So
we're
even though
stuck with the
it wasn't
depth.
platted as an alley, it was developed as such.
But it
so-
is city, the drive is city property?
Yes.
Huh,
But the parking is not. The
Interesting.
parking's private.
that's interesting, okay. Okay.
Other comments?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Morel?
this is an interesting situation. I must admit it is singularly unprecedented, as Commissioner Smith had said. And in looking at it, I grew up walking down that alley to go to school every day, so I'm familiar with the arrangement.
He likes alleys too.
If I had my way, yeah, we'd have alleys that go all the way up and down.
discussion.
But I can't help but wonder, a hypothetical question, if in a year's time, we get an application to tear down 136 and turn it into parking, which is the lot immediately to the east of the lot that I think we're about to rezone, what could we say? It makes for a very funny situation. I will say that whatever they would happen to build on 148 will certainly be, an up-to-date modern house, bigger, better laid out. All of those things that our new houses get us that our old housing stock seems to lack. But still, it is an interesting situation, and I don't. Well, I can support it. Let me put it that way. I do think that. I imagine, broken concrete and weeds notwithstanding, if it were an empty lot with grass on it that was zoned parking and they wanted to build a house there, I'd have no trouble with it. It is sort of the basis of what this city is all about, is we're a bedroom community, and sometimes I think we fight it unnecessarily. But I will say, this is an interesting, I had actually hoped, when I opened my packet and saw that we were rezoning a parcel for Hartfields, that it was something in the upper left-hand corner of their lot at the end of Royal.
Well, if I may, that was discussed. However, when we talked about the pros and cons with that, the pros are it's a residential street, it's not a budding commercial, let's say, or is close to 12 Mile. But you're looking at having to redo a cul-de-sac. You're looking at a lot more reconfiguration. And what I told Ms. Hartfield is I said, you need to look at it and decide, I can't spend your money for you, is sit down with the developer and decide what's going to make the most sense for you, whether carving out part of the larger main parcel or something that is not part of the main parcel, off-site.
As I say, it's just an interesting situation.
Okay. Other
That's all
comments?
I've got.
At the risk of talking too much, it is an unusual situation. And my bias as a planning commissioner is when you have open space in this really tightly developed community, you try and hang on to it. And that's the source of my reluctance here. That and the proximity to the commercial strip that we're trying to revitalize. So those are considerations. On the other hand, we have an owner that can't do much of anything with this lot, and putting a house on there won't be incompatible. It won't detract from the neighborhood. It'll add something to the neighborhood. So I guess I come down on the side of yes, although.
I know.
Like Commissioner Morel, I'm kind of worried about the precedent that we might be setting. Maybe we won't have many opportunities to do something like this again, though.
I don't think you will.
I would say one since 1998, so.
Yeah, this is the first time I've been faced with this decision myself, and I went out and I looked at it yesterday and looked at it, and I sat there and looked at it for a little while, and I went up the street, turned around, and came back and looked at it again. And I thought, well, I see the issue, the potential of what could happen on 12 Mile, and that could become very valuable for parking. The DDA has said they're not interested. The city, probably more than the reason, would be financial issues about buying it and having the money to buy it. And this is a little bit scary. Mr. Morrell brings up the other option that if something did happen on 12 Mile, somebody might buy the house on Tyler, and we might be turning that into parking. I'm not sure. It's, in one breath, I want to say, yes, let's go ahead and rezone it to housing, and then the other side of me says, I'm not sure I want to do this. And I don't know. I'm at a quandary here. I don't know how we take a vote on it. And by the way, what we will be doing tonight is we will make a recommendation to City Council, and it'll go to Council, and they will make the final decision, and they will do it with 2 readings, I believe, right? 2 readings. So, what
Mr.
we're going to
Chairman.
do is make a recommendation to Council, whatever we decide here. Yes?
I'm not sure. I keep on hearing, you folks saying that you've never seen this before. Can you tell me what you mean by that?
What we usually see is a business coming forth to us and wanting to rezone residential to parking.
Parking, okay.
That's what we see,
Okay.
and that gets a lot of people excited very
Right.
quickly.
Okay.
This is the first time since I've sat on this board that I've seen
Oh, okay.
the opposite, where we're going to take parking away and make it residential. So that's what we're all,
Okay.
that's
Well, I guess I'll just say it again. I know back in the day
not
when.
being used. We realize that at
Right,
this
it's not
point.
being used, and I think it's, that if you say no tonight, or whatever the recommendation is to council,
They can always reverse us.
can they?
Oh, yes.
Oh, okay. No, I
And
just.
they do on occasion.
Do they? Okay. Because that's what I'm thinking. We don't know what to do with this, and it's an eyesore. And I drive by it every day, and I'm like, you don't know how much weed killer I've used, and it just goes on, and it's just going to be a win-win for us, especially because it's starting to be a hardship, and Hartfield Lanes is a hardship. Bowling industry, it's not where it's at, and we're doing everything to keep us afloat and to stay afloat. So I would, reiterate the fact that it's, what if? But I went to council. I mean, I have spoke to a few council people. I went to the city. I've gone to DDA, and that's why I waited a whole year on this. And I was told from the DDA that it's too small. They don't want it. It's not enough parking, what they're looking for. So, but we would it would be best for our interest and our family. And if my son ends up building and buying on it, or, whatever. But it's more tax dollars for the city, and it's more. It's going to look a lot more eye appealing. So, back in the day, I don't know why my father picked it up, but he picked up a lot of lots at that time, and obviously back in
Right.
the '70s. So, but I would ask you to consider it because
Okay.
it's a saddle.
That's what we're doing.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Mr. Murat.
Ma'am, and I have a question for you.
Ma'am?
Yeah. Have you approached the business owner of the building on 12 Mile too? about
Yes,
buying it?
yes, we did. And actually, the one gentleman sits on the DDA, the one that owns the accountant. He sits on it, and he had no problem with it, and because they all said it was too small. Because I went and talked to him personally, because I kind of wanted to fill out the DDA a little bit on this. So, but I did. I talked to most of the businesses there to see if anybody was interested, because I was told too that was private parking, also. So I didn't know that. I thought it was all city, but that's all private parking with just a drive-through through the city, right?
Yep.
So,
Okay, all right.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Martin Smith.
Now, you know what's going to happen here. 5, 10, 20 years from now, when this Hartfield Lanes, should it get redeveloped into commercial, not saying it will, but should it be, the person who's living in this particular house is going to be the first one here complaining about traffic
Yeah.
coming out of that property.
Yeah.
We'll worry about that in 15 or 20 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, when we're all still on this board.
Some of us may be gone by then, and might.
But that's what's going to happen.
Yes,
so
I know
I
that.
can see that coming.
Nice little develop
Okay.
it, like we discussed 2 weeks.
All right,
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Murad.
I'd like to make a motion to recommend RZ 0115 to approve, recommend the rezoning to city council.
Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second.
Seconded by Mr. Ting. Discussion on the motion.
You did that? Thank you.
Okay, there's no discussion, so let's take a roll call and see where it ends up.
Buckler,
Yes.
Morel,
Yes.
Murad,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Hungary,
Yes.
Richardson,
Yes.
Shadle,
Yes.
Pop,
Yes.
Burnett.
Yes. So the recommendation is that we'll rezone it to residential. We'll send it down to council. I don't know, it will be in
Be
the
on the
June
June
June 1st
not June
agenda.
1st, I'm sorry.
What?
It's not June 1st.
Well, whatever. No, June 1st. Must be the 3rd.
Calendar anymore. He defers
I
to
don't know. The judge is gone. I don't.
Monday is the first.
Monday is the first.
Monday is the 1st.
June 1st.
That's what I thought.
Somehow it didn't seem right. Okay.
Okay, so it'll be on city council's agenda June
June
1st. Okay, we'll move on to item number 2.
Item number 2 is discussion regarding Woodward Complete Streets recommendation. You had asked that the designers for the Woodward Complete Streets be here because you had many questions despite my thorough report. So they are here. You asked, and here they are.
Okay.
And they did provide,
No.
you have a full packet, but you have the 2 main alternatives, so back and front.
And I've read your report again for the second time.
My thorough report.
I spent my whole lunch hour today pondering this whole thing, so,
Oh, dear.
while I was eating lunch. So, Dan, who's going to do the presentations?
Good evening. My name is Debbie Schutt, and I am the Executive Director of the Woodward Avenue Action Association. And we're actually in a very exciting time with Woodward, where we are at a position where we can look at providing a variety of ways that people can actually traverse the avenue. We have, for a long time, been really automobile focused, so now we're also incorporating how do we redesign the street to incorporate bus rapid transit, which will probably be in front of you in 2016 for a vote to support, to also accommodate the cyclists, which we're finding with the millennials, a whole lot more people would much rather get on their bike and ride, even to work, even in inclement weather, than we've ever seen before. And of course, the pedestrians and how they want to use Woodward Avenue. So we're in the final phases of putting together our Complete Streets Master Plan from the river all the way to Pontiac. And I know that Emmy attended our steering committee meeting when we were looking at the design options for actually focusing mostly on Royal Oak and Huntington Woods, I think, is part of it.
It was the Royal Oak and the Birmingham
Berkley
section.
and Birmingham.
Yep.
And they'll all have the same conditions. So we have 3 of those communities that have decided that they are looking at this particular solution. And then, of course, Berkley, who's wants to discuss it and see the pros and cons. So that's what we're here for. If you know Barb Ahrens and Dan Beard, who are with Parsons Brinkerhoff behind me here, and they actually are the technicians that can get into the nuts and bolts for you. So they should be able to answer any of those questions. Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
So who wants to go first on the planning commission? We got all the people here. Who would like to go first?
Well, I'll
Mr. Richardson, you might as well go ahead. I have a
always
whole-
game.
Your game. I've got a lot to say, so I'll let everybody else go
Well-
first.
My sense from our last meeting is that perhaps the biggest concern we have about proposed changes is the issue of parallel parking on Woodward. My sense is that many of the commissioners here are skeptical about the feasibility of converting to parallel parking on Woodward. So my question is, how much specific consideration did you give to the feasibility of going to this kind of parking on Woodward, and what conclusions did you come up with? In other words, is this recommendation based on a careful study of Woodward and the ability to parallel park on Woodward?
We can tag team this answer.
Anyway.
Hi, I'm Barb Ahrens with Parsons Brinkerhoff. The study's been going on for a long time. There were charrettes that were initially done that some of you, I think, may have attended like a year and a half ago. I'm losing track of time, almost 2 years ago.
Correct.
And, you know, at part of that, there is a lot of ongoing discussion. In fact, there was even a meeting today that WA3 had with the Michigan Department of Transportation, and the same sort of question, sir, came up. Because there's been a lot of questions about the parking issue. As you were talking earlier, you know, there's sometimes never enough parking in certain areas. This plan is trying to be a long-range plan, and there is a challenge with trying to contact every single business. So part of it was trying to look at, this study was to look at all modes of travel, to try to accommodate all modes of travel. And as we all know, there's only so much room in the right-of-way to try to accommodate all these different things. So it's not gone to really door to door to contact all the businesses as to whether they have enough parking. So that's not quite, to answer your question. There is like a lot more that as the department or WA3 or the city would look to implement sections of this that would probably need to be done to address specific blocks, because some have more issues than others. And so the overall goal of this was try to accommodate walking, biking, and the only way you could do that with a bus rapid transit and trying to keep the traffic flow going was to go to parallel parking. You couldn't have the angle parking because it takes too much room. So to answer your question, it was kind of trying to look at all modes, trying to keep parking within the right-of-way still, but you would lose some spots because you can't keep the angle parking.
What about driver safety issues? Was that looked at?
So, yeah, so driver safety, a lot of it, what happens in a lot of these studies is that have been done across the country where they called things like road diets, which means so you're familiar. So you're trying to calm the traffic. So yes, as we all have driven Woodward, the speed changes quite a bit. You know, it goes as high as 50 miles an hour and as low as 25 to 30 in different parts of Woodward as you go along the, 27 miles. So part of it is you don't want to go out and do a speed study because right now some of the speeds in some sections of Woodward are rather high. So you try to do treatments to calm the traffic, having safe implementation of some of these. That's why the exhibit where a lot of them, that one that looks like this, is a lot safer for parking cars. This works rather well like in a Ferndale type setting where they already have a lot of that right now, where the speeds are only 35 miles an hour, and it can function fairly well in spots where they have it. So there has to be enough room to be able to open doors, as you were saying, for safety. But there are definitely some treatments that are a little bit safer than others. I don't know if that answers your question well enough.
That's all I had for right now.
Okay,
Could I
Mr. Murray?
add to that also?
Sure.
And I think Barb covered it, but I want to get a little more in depth because we recognize that, and I know that Berkley really recognizes on Woodward that there are some parking problems and situations. And one of the things I did was last week I had a conversation with the RTA, and we're looking for additional funding. And I said, one of the things we need to do, because there's no way we can go from this kind of concept into implementation without some fixes. And so what we need to do is literally take block by block in these parking areas and look at, with local planning commissions, how do we address the parking situation block by block here? Do we close streets? Do we go back into the alley? Do we not allow a building to reconstruct if a building goes down? How do you provide the parking that you need within your area so these types of things can be realized? So we're looking for additional funding to be able to work directly with the local planning commission to address those issues before we ever get to where we would be putting a shovel in the ground.
At one time, I believe it was Woodward Avenue Action Association, we discussed with them the idea of parking on Woodward, and there was discussion about, well, we draw a line into the residential neighborhoods to when and we needed parking and go after it from that point of view. If you are familiar with what we have just gone through, this group and the city council, about going into the neighborhoods to bring in more parking into the neighborhoods, I don't think there's one member up here that's sitting here right now that want to go through that idea and pursue that concept at this point in time, after what we've just been through regarding some property on a couple of our streets. So I'm really concerned about that idea, if that's still in anybody's thinking.
And I'm fully aware of what you've gone through. I think that you have to look at all options, and I'm not saying this is our plan. I think it has to be your plan.
Mm-hmm.
So how is it that we help find the funding to comprehensively make a good transportation system work on Woodward and also work for the local municipality? Because there's got to be changes.
Absolutely, there's going to be all kinds of changes, and I was very concerned about when we were looking at the parking issue that we just went through. There is a few businesses along Woodward Avenue there that I was very concerned about, because really, in reality, the only parking they have is what's in front of their businesses and a couple spaces in the back, and that's all they have. And when we were talking these proposals, if it was, what do we really do about these businesses? Now, will these businesses remain there? I don't know. They may go away and we may want to do something else there. I don't know the answer to all that, and none of us do. So, yes, but parking is going to be a very crucial issue with this city.
The second thing that we're also looking at, I'll bring you up to speed too, because I think parking's not the only issue that we need to study in detail. The other thing that we need to study in detail is from the municipal perspective of where we're locating stations for bus rapid transit, and what does the local municipality do to make it more conducive for your residents to get to that transit.
No,
And so those are local, to me, that is not an RTA issue. That's a local municipalities issue for getting in-depth into the nitty-gritty of planning to do that. So we're also taking a look to see if we can find additional planning dollars to work with you to look at transit-oriented development and how you get your residents by either bike or pedestrian or whatever to those stops to take transit.
Mr. Martin Smith.
Yeah, I'm skeptical about, and I think a lot of us are, about parallel parking on Woodward. And I know it happens in Clawson. Would part of this scheme be to calm the traffic, slow the speed limit down to 30, 35, whatever it is?
If I had my magic wand,
Okay.
it just happened. However,
They were both nodding yes.
But yeah, we're working to calm the traffic. I don't understand this, and I'm sure Barb does because she's an engineer. But to me, it's like, why can't you just go set the speed limit and let the speed limit be that, and then enforce it? And there's evidently speed studies that say you can't do that, and you actually have to do physical improvements to slow the traffic, and then you study the speeds, and then you can reduce the speed limits.
I drive Woodward Avenue every day. I've driven it for 30 years down to Wayne State University. And before that, I had to go all the way downtown for a couple of years. And let me tell you, I've driven it in winter, summer, spring, and fall. And the worst times of driving, of course, are winter because of the storms and what have you. And it always, always snows about 4 o'clock, between 3 and 4. So all the traffic is trying to get out, and Woodward is a parking lot all the way out, all 3-4 lanes of it, wherever it is. It's heavy until really you get out just beyond McNichols Road, and it widens out a little bit. But then it gets into Ferndale and it slows down again. Then after we have a big snow, usually they only clear about 3 lanes, and I'm saying big snow, 6, 7, 8 incher. And then it's 3 lanes, and it's still heavy going down into the city of Detroit and what have you. And of course, some cities do a magnificent job of cleaning snow. I don't know what Ferndale does, but Ferndale, for some reason, gets out there, and it's almost bare pavement under any conditions. I don't know how they do it, but they manage to do it. But I'm very concerned about the idea when you start reducing speed limits on Woodward, because Woodward is really a road of commerce, and there's people, yes, going into Detroit, out of Detroit, but there's also the services to the businesses along Woodward who need access to the commerce to provide the services to their businesses and bring product to their businesses. So I get a little uneasy about it. And I listened to Dan Burnham. He was here, and I spent some time with Dan Burnham. I spent 2 days in a seminar with him few years back. And I took a bus ride with him and a whole group of people, and we went Woodward, and he talked about traffic calming and reducing it to 3 lanes and all that. And I listened to him very carefully, and it sounds good in principle. But then I get very concerned about the daily route and what happens in specific times. Now, like the other day, if there's an accident on I-75 or something like that, a lot of traffic moves to Woodward. And I've noticed in the mornings, if there's an accident on Woodward, you have a lot of truck traffic now on Woodward going into Detroit and back and forth. So I'm very uneasy about when we say, well, let's reduce the speed limit. Yeah, sometimes I think it's a good idea because some people are doing 80 down there, isn't it? And then it goes from 50 to 40, 45, 35, then it's 40, and then it goes into 30 down in Highland Park and supposedly in Detroit. And it's a mishmash of what happens. And when you say, well, we're going to take a lane away for the rapid transit, I guess we're taking a lane away for the rapid transit. So we're going to be down to 3 lanes. I said, well, I guess my assumption is that 4th lane is going to ride the rapid transit. And I don't know whether that's a feasibility or not, and leave the other 3 lanes, because I don't know who is really going to ride the transit. For me, the transit is not, I live almost at Greenfield and 12 Mile Road. So for me to get to Woodward, I would have to either walk a couple blocks, pick up the bus on 12 Mile, take it to 11 Mile, because that seems to be where the most reasonable stop's going to be, and then get on the rapid transit and go into Detroit, get off and walk to work. And then same thing backwards going back home. And I figured, okay, it takes me about a half hour now to drive one way or the other. That's an hour's drive a day. I'm figuring it's going to take me an hour both ways to do something like that. So I don't know how and where those folks I'm not sure how we get people to the rapid transit to make it the strong feasibility that it really should be.
Well,
But-
one of the things we're seeing, I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, but that's not what this.
I
that's
know
not
it
what
is.
their
I
choice
know it is. But I'm just
That's
saying.
another group.
That's another group. Oh, okay, another group. So we're talking about this. We got the bus rapid transit. They're going to take a lane away from you.
Actually, in this area, I think.
Yes.
It
Yeah. well,
Yes.
it
It
was.
eats in a little bit to the median,
But we still lose a lane.
We lose a lane.
Yeah.
and the lane actually, I think, is to accommodate the bikes and more sidewalk and things like that, so.
Well,
Regardless, we lose a lane.
We're losing a lane.
Yeah, in this
We don't really
segment,
care what.
essentially the median being a little bit more narrow than in other segments.
Right.
To have BRT within the median, it was determined through discussions with our steering committee on the BRT study that to increase that buffer from BRT to auto lanes, that we would actually convert the inside lane into additional median buffer space. So losing a lane, but not from the outside, essentially.
In the drawings you're showing us tonight, the bus rapid transit is running in, I guess, the lane that's closed and the median remains. Is that it, or is it going to
The
eat in?
idea-
Is it
well-
going to eat into the median?
Again, the transit study that was done, and that, the locally preferred alternative was completed, and that's why this was kind of put on hold, this Complete Streets project.
Yeah.
Because they were waiting for the locally preferred alternative to get finished, so then they could say, okay, this is where it's gonna go. What had been determined a while ago, and what these folks are just assuming, because that was already defined as the locally preferred alternative, is, back, what was it, last year or 18 months ago, the study found that we did have, and I realize this is up for debate, but this is what the experts said, is that we did have room to devote a lane to the BRT, rather than some communities have to share it. We had a room to devote it. So the question was, do you want to eat up your whole median with it, or do you, and I said, well, I think we'd rather have it completely separated so that you don't have people making a Michigan left merging into the BRT lane. Let's just keep it separate, and let's put the median on either side so we're not losing all of the green space. So that's what you see on the 11 mile to 14 mile in the small diagram.
That's what I'm seeing here, right?
Correct.
Correct.
So what these folks are doing is based upon that assumption, let's figure out how we fit cars, BRT, bikes, and pedestrians in a
Exactly.
way that
Okay.
works. And so we have one option was the 11 mile to 14 mile, which showed
Right.
parallel parking on Woodward, a bike lane, which may or may not be at street level, could be at sidewalk level, and then a really big wide sidewalk, no service drive.
Right.
And then the Birmingham model, we'll call it, showed that the service drive would continue. You would have a bike lane and you'd have parallel parking. Now, that's not so much an issue with Berkeley because we have parallel parking.
Right.
Royal Oak, they've got the angled, so
Right.
they're at a disadvantage. With the Birmingham option, which certainly is more similar to what we have, public safety was very concerned about the bike lane being kind of out on its own, and people are busy, oh, I need to grab a parking space, and they nail a bicyclist.
Right.
Because nobody's looking for them.
Right.
So I know this group had talked about a hybrid, so they started designing for you, of putting the bike lane. I believe it was going to be, if you're looking at the Birmingham model, you'd have sidewalk, then bike lane, then
Right.
parallel parking,
Yeah.
then the service drive.
We
and
talked
then
about
the-
that last.
We talked about that the last,
That up last
Right.
month.
yeah.
So, did you follow what I said
Yeah.
as far as the double,
So I don't know where,
would that work?
that's the question.
They started coming up with an option C, and that's when they said, we should probably have these nice people here,
That's why you're here.
rather than designing for you. Okay, if we're looking at the Birmingham, is rather than have this nice bicyclist here, put the bicyclist over here. And
You're
then
essentially
Inside the
protecting the
cars,
bike
next
lane
to
with
the
the
sidewalk.
cars.
Next to the
that
sidewalk.
keeps
No
protected.
bollards.
So it's kind of this cut out, but put next to.
So, that's,
Would that work?
that's something we would definitely look at. Just first blush, that configuration. One thing that you would have to account for is the typical is 3 feet of separation from a parking lane to a bike lane
Sure.
because you have to account for the door
Right,
swings.
right, right. Yep.
So that's something that's additional space that we would need to account for if we were to move the facilities over. But a benefit by shifting the bike lane adjacent to the sidewalk is that you could actually bring it up to
Yes.
grade with the sidewalk, and maintenance issues, it's just a little bit easier. Because in other cities, when a sidewalk's been at a separate grade, you have, especially winter climates, you have businesses that.
Snow dump.
Yeah, exactly. So that's a problem that's essentially solved by that. And there might be some issues in terms of, when you get to cross streets, how you navigate, but those are obviously things that can be designed and mitigated,
Right.
so.
Okay.
Oh, I got a lot of questions now. Mr. Martin Smith, and then I'll go to Mr.
Yeah, that's
Garrett.
exactly what we ended our meeting with last month.
Yeah.
And why you folks are here. Did you say, did you say that this scheme, which is the one we're talking about with this arrow moving the bike lane over here in some manner, is this a scheme that Royal Oak and Huntington Woods approved?
No,
Did I
not
hear that in the
Huntington
beginning?
Woods, no.
Okay.
Royal Oak seemed to like it better
Like it.
because
I don't mean
was.
approved, I mean supported. Yeah.
Yes, at first blush,
As
that,
opposed
that
to-
was less
as opposed to
extreme.
this one.
Correct.
Okay. To this. I don't blame
Did
them.
they? They actually said no? Okay.
Which one did they
Too much
say?
going on that won't,
The scheme actually originated from Birmingham's multimodal plan.
Yeah.
So we wanted to honor that and reflect that in our plans. And then actually when we showed that scheme, I believe it was Royal Oak, Ferndale, and Pleasant Ridge all
Yeah.
preferred that.
The people that
treatment.
don't, yeah, which was interesting because.
Multiple
This one.
communities, yeah.
Yes, and Huntington Woods and Berkeley were saying, that median's kind of a no man's land and nobody really does anything with it and it ends up with stuff all over it.
I like I think when we finished our discussion last month or whenever it was, this is the one we all
Yeah.
preferred.
Definitely.
Preferred that.
Right.
The only issue was the bicycle lane.
Yeah, and that's why all these arrows are here with red Sharpie.
Yeah.
And I think we preferred the rapid bus in the lane instead of in the middle of the inward lane instead of the middle of the median.
Yeah, I like leaving the median there and using.
Because,
the
if everything goes defunct someplace, you get that lane back for traffic.
Right.
Not that it would.
Right.
But should everything not work, for some reason, you have your lane back for regular traffic like it is today. We're not saying that's gonna happen, of course, but.
Well, again, the locally preferred alternative's already been adopted and everybody signed off on it being in the middle. Now, I don't know if cost-wise that's gonna work.
I think
but
that's
the
gonna be
Well, the
astronomically
idea was,
expensive.
is that you would have, you'd have it separated instead of people that are trying to make a Michigan left and you've got a BRT
Mm-hmm.
coming in, and how are you going to negotiate that? I mean, there's gonna be
Well,
less
it's
Michigan lefts
Same way you
already.
do semis and buses now, I guess. Just keep an eye open.
Okay, so the idea was that it would be separated, and rather than, have the median be completely covered up with
I would agree with that.
BRTs or whatever, that at least it would be separated, and it would make it easier to separate those modes, and that's what had been already adopted.
And that's.
And you guys
and
are
that-
very fickle as you're, changing your minds now.
And that's leaving.
Well, we're looking at a different, a fully rendered plan. I don't know to what degree, and I don't know what each of us said about it either, but some of us may have changed our mind, but
Okay. just-
that's okay.
But that,
You don't have to go
they-
back in the record and see what I said, but.
At any rate, these folks are basing it on, we're not revisiting it, they're moving
Okay.
on, and they're looking at the rest of the right-of-way.
I think as a group, and I'm not speaking for all 9 of us, but I think generally as a group, the Birmingham plan, as we called it, I think we kind of preferred.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the thought was the Birmingham plan, if
Flipping-
the bikes
if we can flip
moved
that.
away from, so it doesn't get hit by somebody looking for a parking
Yeah,
space.
Yeah.
I agree, because
And,
as an avid bike rider,
Yes,
well, as an avid
You don't wanna
bike
get
rider,
hit
there's
by a
no
car.
place to put bike lanes on Woodward. I mean, it's just a dumb idea to start with, but we need them. It's like that bike lane on Northwestern Highway that was been there for 5 years. I've never seen a bicycle on it, but it's crossing right-hand turn lanes and everything, and that's just not. But we want to get bicycle path on Woodward. There's no good solution, so you take the least of the evil solutions, which I think is what we're talking about.
I think also putting it at sidewalk grade rather than street grade.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me ask a question, since I got all the bicyclists here.
All of them?
Why do you want to buy, what would you do riding in Woodward? What does it do?
I never go north on Woodward. I ride south because it's downhill and I can keep it about 25, 30 miles an hour. Early Sunday mornings when there's no traffic. But it is not a safe place to be with a bicycle. There's too many curb cuts and ins and outs if you try to ride on the sidewalk. So you wear a bright yellow jacket and you ride on the, you hug the curb.
We did.
North from Ferndale, I did ride it.
Yeah.
Really?
And I rode sidewalk the whole way on the Ferndale Royal Oak side.
Right.
Mr. Chair, I ride wherever I want to, and I ride Woodward, and maybe it's just me, but hazards make the ride more exciting.
You know what was amazing about my ride yesterday? Is I don't think I passed one pedestrian walking on the sidewalks.
Really?
It was a nice day too, kind of.
Yeah.
Sidewalks are dangerous coming
Yeah.
up Woodward because there's weird little cuts where they're
Yes,
90
there are.
degrees and they're not marked and you end up hitting
That's-
a curb if it's like hazy or whatnot. And it's the straightest, it's the shortest distance between two
Right.
points is taking Woodward. So like I rode to Ferndale yesterday from Berkley, but I like went down Scotia and
That's
up in
what I
Oak
did
Park,
going
and then
there.
I cut over and you cut over and you cut over to stay off Woodward.
That's
and
what I
you
did
end up
going
going,
Right. We always
More.
we always take the side roads going north, which is uphill. It really is.
Yeah.
And if it's early enough, we'll take the inside lane coming south, because you can
Or
get
cut
a
over to
good
keep
head of
going
speed,
up.
good head of steam going up, coming south.
Okay.
Crossing 696 is not pleasant.
No, that's a total mess. It really needs to be changed completely there.
So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you. Sort of. Mr. Murad.
Since some of my questions have now been taken, so.
Go.
I think also, one of the things we're not thinking about here in Berkeley is north of 12 Mile, we have the cemetery. So I don't see like an option as to what's gonna happen there. That's one thought I had, not that we really need parking there. So it's
It's easy.
just a sidewalk and a bike lane, I would guess. So that was the one observation. Then I kind of questioned why, like, through 14 Mile, the bus rapid transit was in the middle of the median, and then when you got to Birmingham, it moved to the outside. What was the reasoning for that? Just, that was their preference, and this happened to be ours? Okay. I would think it'd be just easier to leave it one way or the other the whole way, and, I kind of think the idea of putting it on the outside, you could put the station, like, where they stop, right in the middle.
Amy's gonna repeat herself.
Sounds
too.
fun.
So I'm-
Preferred
I just-
alternative.
Here
I'm
we
just
go,
saying,
we're back to
so-
that.
So that's
I'm
all I had.
sorry.
It's not
All
within
my
the
other
scope
questions
of
were
this
asked.
project.
I know, but all my other questions were asked, so that was it.
But it's a complete street, Amy.
Right.
Yeah.
That's nice, but that part's.
Mr. Tangari?
we're adding
To
the
pick
rest.
up the cemetery baton, it appears to me that there's enough space to actually do a two-way multi-use path there, because one of the things that I think about when I look at these plans is, it'd be nice to be able to bike down Woodward and feel vaguely safe, and then be able to bike back as well, but you're still crossing Woodward at some point. So I think the cemetery is kind of a unique opportunity to actually give people the ability to go in both directions on one side. So I'm hoping that as these plans get fleshed out, that at least that stretch will be considered, at least on that stretch, just because I think it would improve the overall convenience of the whole corridor, even if it was just for that one kind of, 3/4 of a mile or something. But in general, I think that I mean, there might be some, pain as the transition occurs and for maybe a year or so afterward. But I think in general that it's going to ultimately constitute a big improvement. It's just, figuring out a way to get there and ironing out the details. Because, we say we look, basically, the way I look at it is we like the 14 mile to Quarton version in principle, but not necessarily in the details. So I guess I'm looking forward to ironing out more of the details as we go forward.
Other comments? Mr. Richardson?
Unless someone's ahead of me.
I don't know.
Okay.
Betty over here?
All right, well,
Okay.
my question is based on the discussion we've had thus far. Both plan, option A and option B, and now option C that we're talking about, they all three of them feature parallel parking, correct? They're just, the row is in a different spot.
Yes.
So I would take it then that between those three options, there's no real gain or loss in terms of overall parking capacity. They're pretty much equal in that respect?
The one on Woodward is gonna be less just because of your turns.
Because of what?
Because if it's right on the road and you're
Uh-huh.
turning here, you need to be set back from the corner.
Right, okay, well, do we have any idea,
So in a service drive,
Okay.
they don't have to worry about that so
do
much.
we have any idea how many spaces that's gonna cost?
No.
All right. Well, one of the things that's troubling me about this discussion is we don't seem to have many facts or figures. We don't have, at least I don't have,
Yeah, we're still in the
parking
conceptual
capacity
phase.
to date, the theoretical parking capacity after these changes are adopted.
Well, figure 2 per block that you'd
Yeah.
lose.
Okay, 2 per block. Okay, well, that doesn't
It's
seem
just-
like a lot to me. Yeah, go ahead.
Could I attempt to answer
Sure,
though?
no, go ahead.
If you have this configuration though here, you'd have to have an access out for them. So I'm not even sure really if you'd lose that much more parking because you'd have to have an access point to get the people out.
The service drive
The service drive
yes,
option,
I'm
thank
thinking
you.
of the one on
Okay.
street.
Right,
You
but
would
I'm
have
saying when we said we'd lose parking here you'd lose more parking with
I
an
didn't say that.
on-street. I'm not really sure you would because you'd have to
Yeah.
get, when you have the service drive, they have to be able to, if there's a right turn at an intersection, you gotta get them out of this service drive parking lot. So they would have to have an access point out, so you'd be stopping the parking anyway internally to get, the traffic out. So I'm not sure if you'd really lose that much
I'm
more
just-
is I guess what
Our
I'm saying.
DPW and Public Safety looked at it, and their thought was that there would be a loss. There wasn't certain what. I don't think you should have, I know parking's very important, but I think you should go with what you think is gonna be the overall best for Berkeley's Woodward,
Well, that's what I'm
how you
driving
wanna
at.
look at, rather than, you
It's
don't
not gonna
want
be a huge
parking
amount.
to, you don't
That-
want parking to be the tail wagging the dog.
That's what I'm driving at here. And the other thing is the Birmingham option, or the Berkeley / Birmingham option that's being discussed. That would preserve these islands, is that the correct term for them? That abut the parking and bike lanes. But the first option would not preserve them. They would be gone, is that right?
Correct.
Well, my comments are these. First of all, it bears repeating. The RTA plan is not in front of us. It's already been adopted. These options are building off of the adopted preferred alternative. So they make sense in seen in that light. I personally lean toward the first option. I don't see any, the only thing that concerns me about option 1 is a possible safety issue with parking on Woodward, parallel parking on Woodward as opposed to parking off Woodward behind those islands. I think from every other perspective, option 1 is clearly the superior, yeah, that one is,
How many of these are gonna be left after the first winter?
well, when I say option one, I think we've already discussed not having the, what are they called?
Bollards?
Bollards, not having those. And we've also discussed raising the bike lane to the curb, up to the curb. I support those changes that we have discussed. So when I say option one, I would say option one as modified by our discussion. But getting back to my main point, there's been a lot of discussion about traffic calming and about snowstorms and the slowing of traffic on Woodward. I would say that if the RTA plan goes through, traffic will be calmed on Woodward. Regardless of what plan we adopt, it's going to be calm because you're losing lanes and you're going to slow the traffic down. That's a given, I think, for the purpose of our discussion. I don't think anything we decide is going to have a material effect on that particular aspect of the Woodward Avenue planning. Also seeing trends in society toward less driving. You know, that's one of the reasons we want to have the RTA. We want to provide a choice, and that if that choice is successful, it's going to remove vehicles from Woodward. So we're seeing that trend. In fact, I was reading the other day that there's a trend now toward building houses back with one-car garages because that's all these smaller households that we have are using anymore. I found that difficult to believe coming from my generation, but there you have it. I mean, it seems like that's a trend. Then the last point I want to make is that, you know, we have a complete streets plan. The state has a complete streets plan. Woodward has a complete streets plan. I strongly believe we need to be serious about that plan, and that means really elevating the opportunities for pedestrians and bicyclists. And I think, like I was saying just a moment ago, that's the trend. We're plugging into a trend, changing demographics in this society that way. So I lean toward option one. I think the other thing is that option one gets rid of these islands, which I think are going to be a maintenance problem as we go ahead. I don't see how they really add to anything. So so I'm leaning that toward option one with the changes that we made to remove these bolixes, or what are they called?
Bollards.
And to elevate the bike lane to the up above the curve. I think that's the sensible option. So that's my say on this, at least for now.
I have a question on, and then I'll get to whoever over here. In the Birmingham plan that shows this, I'll call it a service drive for lack of better whatever, and the parking is isolated in it. It's more calming for parking than parking out on Woodward trying to negotiate with traffic moving down Woodward. Is that would that be contiguous, say from 12 Mile, that service drive, all the way to 11 Mile with openings at the streets? Or do you have to go a block, turn out onto Woodward, and then, or would that be a contiguous? Do you see that as a contiguous running between Woodward, or between 12 Mile and 11 Mile with openings at the residential streets, Catalpa? You understand my question?
Yeah, and that's part of where it really depends upon what the communities do with this land use going forward.
Okay.
So there's not, as we kind of talked at the very beginning, one of the first questions was, how does this work? A lot of it has to do, as Debbie said, with talking with the communities and how do they envision this working.
Yeah.
So this pictorial is very good for the aspect that has that, but as you raised, sir, you know, very much so, it's not always the case where it runs continuously. There are certain blocks where it does quite a bit,
Yeah.
and this works rather well. And then there are some blocks that are not and are going to need a little bit different treatment, where you're either going to be trying to raise it next to the sidewalk where it exists. So one of the concepts we've been talking about is that having it raised next to the sidewalk, you know, would it be actually being raised next to the sidewalk all the way along? And then depending upon what happens with these service drives, you know, whether they're on the street, as you were talking about going with this option, and the cars are right there parking, or whether they're in a lot parking, it just depends upon where. So this is 27 miles long, and it's hard to envision every single piece because there's
details.
so many variations on a theme. But to try to answer your question, sir, you're right. I do think there are some things that still have to be worked out as to exactly how it would be.
Okay.
But, you know, there are different treatments that can be done all the way along. You know, as you mentioned earlier, sir, about the cycle track kind of aspect along the cemetery, you know, that's a treatment that's being done and being looked at as possibly further south along Palmer Park. You know, that could be something that would work well along the cemetery. So as you actually start looking parcel by parcel and block by block, there are different things that would have to be done to get it to be contiguous. But the goal, sir, would be to have it be as safe as it could be for the cyclists. And if it's raised up at a sidewalk level, we would try to have it run along the sidewalk, you know, adjacent to the sidewalk is the word I'm looking for, regardless what happens, whether these service drives occur or not.
Right.
I don't know if that answers it, but we don't have it exactly mapped on every single section of it, but there are many different treatments. And if the goal is to keep it next to the sidewalk, it would stay next to the sidewalk and try to be built next to that regardless whether there's a service drive or not.
So what are you looking for us from at this juncture? What are you looking for? Because now I am really confused. Because at this junction, I don't have a plan really. I don't have anything really
So
here
this
in
is
front
a
of me.
vision for the next 10 years. And so there are, you know, 10 years, because the goal is by 2025. So it's trying to understand what would be the general vision for with what you have. I mean, we can write in suggestions, like, because we have this, and we're also going to have, like, write-ups for different treatments. So we could put in the section that's applicable next to the cemetery, we could have a comment that near the cemetery something could be looked at for cycle track to make sure that that suggestion is captured moving forward. What we're looking for from you tonight, though, is to look at whether roughly what kind of treatment generally is looked at, because a lot of the details can be worked out as it actually gets implemented block by block. But the goal is a vision. Do you see it more as this option 1, 2, or 3, or A, B, or C, or, you know, however you guys wanted to call it? But we're kind of looking for what is the vision you would like to see for Berkeley, and how it's shown roughly. We know that there's nuances to it, but we're trying to figure out a preference to show in a graphic to give an overall example of what you're looking for.
Well, and I think the Planning Commission, City Council has received the packet, but I think
They're
really
looking for direction from us. guess.
I think that's the appropriate
Yes.
spot. I think you guys should make a recommendation, and then
That's what
we
I
can
think,
try
too.
to explain it to them. and
Yeah, I
Since
can't
it's a
wait for
hybrid,
that. I can't wait for that meeting.
the hybrid.
Mr. Chairman, I'm not available that day in case you need me.
Figured you wouldn't.
In case you need me to fill in for you.
Yeah. Okay, so you've listened to a lot here tonight. Do you want to sleep on it, or do you want to make what do you want to do? What is the desire of the Planning Commission at this juncture?
Well, we're not unanimous.
Obviously, we're not unanimous.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
In what form is this going to be conveyed to the council? Like a report or a letter or?
Well, they'll have a report, and then they'll have this with, you know, circles and arrows and Sharpie on it, explaining,
Okay.
and me talking,
Okay,
so,
and they'll probably have other questions, too.
yes.
I know they will.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I think majority of us like what the plan was for north of 14 Mile, but with moving the bike lane.
I think
I
that's,
think that's majority of us.
But
like
I don't
that.
think we want to represent it as that was the Planning Commission's recommendation. If it's 6-3, 7-2, 8-1, whatever, just say there are votes for this other. So, you know, they don't think it, I mean, normally we give them a yes or no recommendation, or this or that
Usually they
recommendation.
have a record of how the.
Right.
How the
they have a
planning-
copy of the minutes, and they
They would-
see
how
how
we
it
would
went
vote.
down.
Yeah, they
and
do.
They see a vote.
they would see
They
how
look at
we would
that.
vote.
So I think it would be appropriate if somebody wanted to make a motion to recommend to City Council the 14 Mile to Corton with the change that the bicycle lane be moved
to the
between the
sidewalk.
parallel parking and the sidewalk, and that there be the door zone, or whatever we
The door
call
zone,
it,
exactly.
and no ballards, and that the bike lane and the door zone be at sidewalk level.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, yes.
You're going to make
My
that motion? Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second it.
Second by Commissioner Murad. Any more discussion on the motion, or can we just take a vote on it?
Mr. Chairman, I think that's just about the worst idea that has come out of this planning commission. Because I personally, I think in Tomorrowland, the cyclists are gonna ride single file down this 5-foot track in only one direction. And I think the idea of putting bicyclists with pedestrians at the same level, you might as well just tell the pedestrians to stay home. Because I think for every two that go this way, you're gonna get one guy who doesn't wanna cross Woodward, who's gonna come back up the other direction. I mean, I don't ride a bike on Woodward. I think it's kinda crazy, and I'm
Oh, it
only
is.
one vote here, so
It is.
I think we should vote on this motion and get this off our table.
Mr. Chairman,
But I think the idea of moving this thing is insane.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Martin Smith,
Well,
we're
now I'm
discussing.
confused. Are these one-way bike lanes or are these two-way bike lanes?
Be
Oh,
one way.
I thought they were two-way bike lanes.
They're not wide enough.
It's, the bicyclist is going with the flow that the traffic,
Well, they normally want to do that.
it's not like where you tell you when you,
Pedestrians don't.
it's not, it is one way, sir, and it's.
Okay,
and that's what it
I'm
is.
sorry, I always thought this was a two-way
No,
bike
other than
lane.
the suggestion the gentleman had regarding along the cemetery, no, that was what he was suggesting, was
right,
that would be two-way.
right.
These
And
are
that's an
one-way,
8-foot bike
like
lane,
you're
right.
driving like a car.
Right,
one
no,
way.
I realize what
One come back, you-
Commissioner Tangeri said about that, but I thought that, which is fine, but I thought these were all two-way bike lanes, because as one of the avid bike riders, I don't, especially if I'm off traffic, I don't necessarily go with traffic.
Mr. Chair.
Mish-
So I live in
Buckler.
Berkeley and I want to stay in Berkeley and I want to go to a Berkeley restaurant.
Yeah.
Maybe the unnamed one down Woodward, south of Catalpa there. So for me to get home, I'm either going to have to cut in
Yeah.
from there or I'm going to have to cross Woodward, go north on
Yeah,
this bike
no.
lane and cross back over, twice putting my life in jeopardy crossing Woodward.
No,
Unless I want to cut in and take a side
you
street.
could cut in and take a side street for a different route. I don't know. I'm not a
But
bicyclist,
if I want to
so.
go further north, let's say I need to go, up to, I don't know.
Get a cell phone,
Then you'd have to cross the
I have a
road.
cell phone.
get another one
Get another one.
after you have dinner.
Then you'd have to cross the road.
Then you're gonna ride where the cars are,
I know,
in this no man's
I'm
land in
with
between
you.
the parking and here, and
I don't like,
I don't think
I
that,
think there should just be a rack on the bus where I can stick my bike on the bus.
There will be.
Well,
I don't believe the motion takes into account the state of the cycling mindset that says
I agree.
we can go where we want,
Where we want.
we only obey traffic signs when our life is in danger. And since, and we have, and somehow we have a right to be here.
We
even
don't
though
stop
we don't
at
pay
stop signs because
registration
we have to
fees to
unclip
have
our
the road stop.
pedals.
So regardless of the plan, bicyclists are gonna do it.
Yeah, sorry.
Regardless of the plan, cyclists are gonna do what they want anyhow.
Well, I understand
Right
that,
on the
and that's
sidewalk
why,
now, right? So, but, regardless of the plan,
yeah.
The cyclists are gonna do their
The
thing.
benefit of this plan of having them out with the cars is that
Less of
at least we're trying to keep them away from the pedestrians. Because I do believe that cyclists are a danger to pedestrians,
Agreed.
no matter how
why
you
you should
slice
ride
it.
on the street.
I've had multiple situations in my life where, for some reason, the one cyclist who wants to ride the wrong way down the street is riding the wrong way down the street as I'm pulling out, looking this way to make my right turn, and he's coming from that way.
Yeah,
And then somehow I'm the bad guy because he has to slam on his brakes.
yes.
And I guess I'm a cynic when it comes to cyclists. But I think you know how I'm going to vote on this motion.
I
just
know
think
how
it's
you're.
a terrible
I
idea.
think you know how you're gonna vote.
I just want to know who's going to pay for it.
Well,
Okay.
if I may, I respond.
Mr. Richardson.
You know, change is difficult because we're trying to imagine the future, and it's hard. But I think other cities are light years ahead of us when it comes to melding bicyclists, pedestrians, and auto traffic. And I have visited cities where there are bike lanes in remarkable places. So I'm not sure Commissioner Morel is really giving people enough credit for learning how to use the facilities that they're presented with. But I do have a question as well. Let's assume, just for the sake of argument, this motion passes and it goes to City Council and they they endorse it. What is the import of that? What do you do with that information?
We reflect it on the section.
Yeah.
There are posters like this for each municipality.
Okay.
Okay, so what we will do is reflect in the section that reflects for Berkeley what the preferred plan is.
But, and it has no, I mean, when it comes to actually reconfiguring our side of Woodward, that would have to proceed through normal channels, though, am I right?
When we get to that point, there's all the design and the
Yeah.
engineering and the,
Yep.
all of that has to be gone through.
So this is just a concept. It's a
Yeah,
planning
th-
document.
It's exactly a concept, but I'll tell you, you know, concepts can go a long way because people understand pictures, and then they start gearing toward, you know, this is going to be the future for. So that's what we wanted to make sure that what's reflected for Berkeley is what you can agree upon is reflected for Berkeley.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Okay, let's take a vote.
So we got a motion made and seconded, and this would be for, just so we're clear, 14 Mile to Corton
Yep,
with,
bike lane moved in.
well, the one-lane bike lane, or one-way bike lane over this way, and then a door zone, all at pedestrian sidewalk level, then the parallel parking, and then the service drive, and then the median with the plastic plants, and then we have the street, okay? And that motion was made by Martin Smith
Martin.
and supported by
Commissioner Murad,
Murad. Okay, you ready?
go.
Okay, and this would be to recommend this to City Council for endorsement. Okay, Shadle,
Yes.
Tangari,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Morel,
No.
Murad,
Yes.
Pop,
Yes.
Richardson,
No.
Buckler,
Yes.
Barnett.
Yes.
Okay.
Can I ask a question?
On the bus things we
Statistically, bicycle automobile incidents versus bicycle pedestrian incidents, what happens more?
That's a really hard question to answer.
I think it really depends upon how they're mixed, and how they operate.
I know that's a loaded question.
Yeah,
I'm
it
just-
really, I don't, sir, have that off the top of my head. Injury-wise, though, obviously, you can guess which one's worse. You know, the bicyclist with a car is very severe, though,
been
actually, if
there.
you're a pedestrian, getting hit by a bicyclist, it's not great, but it's not always sometimes as severe. So it really is a challenge, and it depends upon the community. You look at the statistics and how they actually function. But they have found in cities that, as it was articulately stated by Mr. Richardson, you know, that a lot of the communities do this across the country, and you actually have better safety when you actually try to get them to stay in a certain spot. It's not ideal. This is not a great
There's
situation, as you stated, where you want to stay on only one side. But a lot of the cities, like New York City, that people thought that would never be a city, that's actually had huge success, and they've had less crashes, and that in incidents when they actually try to put cars in one spot, bikes in one spot, and people in one spot, and they've had reductions in crashes. So by trying to pick a treatment to as safely assist the community, it will actually have a positive improvement.
Are there, like I said, I'm a bicyclist. I ride wherever I want, but are there, and that's not a bad thing, are there incidences or are there locations where people put bicycle lanes on a Woodward-type avenue? I know that New York, you know, it's bumper to bumper all day long, and there's bikes in and out, and they're doing their thing, but those cars are closer to being stopped than going, where Woodward is, you know, 40, 45, whatever the speed limit, you know, 10 over the speed limit, whatever it is putting bike lanes, and I'm just asking, that's not what we're looking at, but is that something that has been, and I go back to the Northwestern Highway, you know the lane I'm talking
Yes,
about.
I
Have
do.
you ever seen a bike on it?
I'm not over there enough
Okay.
to.
Is that
Nicely
something
done.
that's done successfully in other parts of the country?
Usually you try to keep it on roads that are less than 40 to 45 miles an hour. You want it to be less.
And less than
lower speeds.
100,000 cars a day?
But New York City, though, has done it on streets that have, I can't cite off the top, but they have very high traffic volumes. And they have been doing these on some of the avenues and the other streets more. So it is becoming more prevalent and that's why the many treatments that were looked at as part of different things that could be done, have come from other studies across the country. Trying to look at that. Yes, it is not always as popular, but I would say as the trends are changing, we're finding there's becoming more demand across the country to look at streets such as a Woodward to facilitate safe movement of all modes.
There's no perfect way of doing it, and that's why we're here.
No, and
That's-
and as you all eloquently stated tonight, there's a lot of challenges with the Road of Woodward. That is a great facility. It has a lot of things to offer, and you're trying to accommodate a lot of modes and only so much room. So it gets to be a challenge as to what do you want to balance and what are the goals of the communities that they want to accommodate. So,
Thank you for answering.
thank you so much for your time tonight.
Thank you all for this discussion and for being here this evening. We appreciate it, and we'll move it on to council. Thank you. All right, let's move on to item number 3.
Item number 3 is discussion regarding proposed master plan amendment to the single-family residential districts. As I said in my report, we had a good discussion with a few developers, and we're looking at amending the zoning ordinance to allow for various residential building types, not just single-family detached. And the developers essentially, it was a good discussion and said that, that it could be realistic if you had enough lots. So, we do need to amend the master plan to say something different because we specifically say, hi, that's okay.
Don't run.
I normally do this, but we have so many bikers here, and we have a bike event coming up. So, I want to take the opportunity before I walk out the door to make sure that you all have an opportunity to participate.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So much.
Thank you.
So our master plan says single-family detached residential. If we're going to want to allow something other than that, we should have met our master plan, so we're not breaking our own policy. So I did come up with, it's certainly not long, it's not particularly ornate. Feel free to critique, just don't be unkind.
I thought it was very good, to be honest with you. After I read it and went through it all, I said, she did a pretty darn good job of this.
I think we've thought a lot of it through
Yeah.
already. It was just a matter of putting it down and
My question is, does this have to be reviewed by our city attorney?
not especially, no. I mean,
No?
what would
Okay.
happen is if the planning commission wanted to, if, when you're satisfied with it, not if, when you are happy with it, it would go to, you would send it on to council, and council actually has to essentially say, yeah, go ahead and send it to the surrounding communities
Right.
and the utilities and underlying agencies and the county, and then they have 63 days, I think I
Right.
said in my report, to comment.
Yeah. When you mention the utilities, you never mention the phone company. Does it have to go to the phone company? AT&T?
Which one?
Not send it to
Well,
the
there's
phone.
several phone companies, but,
I don't think it does.
huh?
I don't think it, and it doesn't have to go to cable. I'm not,
Okay.
I will check, but
Okay, that was my only question.
this is my old list from a long time ago,
Yeah, I
so
know.
I'm consistent.
Yes. But I thought it was a pretty good,
It's a good background document, yeah.
I thought it was very good.
Because sorry, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Mr. Martin.
Because this doesn't update our plan at all, our master plan, or we don't locate any place with this document.
I'm sorry?
We're not locating specific sites or locations or areas. No. Unless I blew by it somewhere, we're not.
No, I
No.
mean, we're essentially saying that
We're going to allow it.
the concept is to allow it within certain conditions, and then your zoning map or your, depending upon how we want to go forward with the form-based code, whether it's a matter of
So
simply
that gets in all
describing
that
the
stuff,
text
yeah.
amendment, right.
Yeah.
Those
Okay.
would be the specifics, but this is essentially saying that, given certain conditions, we think it would be okay, rather than no,
Right.
which is what we say now.
Mr. Richardson?
Yes. I just have a couple quick questions under the recommendations. Talking about two-family and four-family housing and townhouses proximate to collector streets or business districts. Is the term collector street defined in the master plan anywhere?
It is not. We
Do
can
we-
certainly do that.
I don't really know quite exactly what that means, to be frank. What
That
is
would
a
be-
It
collector
means
street?
something that doesn't
Beverly.
front.
Beverly,
that-
Wiltshire.
that-
Pardon?
Beverly east of Coolidge, or west of Coolidge.
Beverly, yeah, West Cool, Wiltshire, Catalpa.
All kinds of
A
suggestions.
collector street, by definition, would be something that is
No.
not a thoroughfare, but does
Right.
not have,
There's a lot of homes.
It's in Catalpa. I'm glad we
like
sorted
I'm
that
at
out.
home.
Ms. Manson, if
Okay,
you could.
let's, we've got too many conversations going. Okay, Mr. Richardson has asked the question, what is a collector street?
A collector street, by definition, would be something that's not a major thoroughfare. So it's not a
Alright.
Coolidge, it's not a 12-mile, doesn't have commercial uses on it, but it does not have residential uses fronting on it. It doesn't have, you
Okay.
don't have an address on
I
Beverly,
think
let's
we actually
say,
talked
or-
about that last time.
Yes.
Right, but it's not, and we can certainly add a sentence, or two, or three,
Yeah.
explaining what a
I
collector is.
think it might be advisable,
Okay.
just,
There's no addresses on
Correct.
Berkeley Street.
Yeah,
Correct.
Berkeley, Henley.
Yeah.
okay. And then, right, I understand.
Okay.
Then the other quick question is, the very next paragraph talks about allowing apartments a quarter mile from transit stops on Woodward. I'm just wondering if any thought has been given to other transit routes, like along 11 Mile or Coolidge or 12 Mile. Is there any reason why we're just thinking about Woodward? My question.
Well, we already adopted a portion of the TOD study that was developed by a number of Woodward communities, including Berkeley with LSL planning, and we adopted that as part of the master plan, and it specifically singled out Woodward.
Okay.
So this speaks to that. We have bus lines along Coolidge, we have bus lines along 12 Mile. I don't know that we would want to look at, that would really change the fabric quite a bit of the community. If we looked at every smart bus stop and looked at a quarter mile radius, you'd be looking at,
Okay, well,
that
that's fair enough answer, thanks.
okay.
Okay. Other questions? Other comments? Boy, everybody seems to think you've nailed it pretty good.
Or you guys are tired.
I think that may be part of it
You
too.
always put your stuff at the end, yeah.
I think maybe that's
You
true.
noticed that, did you?
But I think you did a very good job. I was
I do.
impressed with that. So,
I can add the collector street definition. Do you want to look at it again next month before sending it on to council, or how do you want to proceed?
what do you want to do? You want to look at it again, or do you want to let her go?
I am confident that you can add a collector street definition that we will
Do we
all be
need to
proud
take a
of.
vote on this? We
Send
need,
it on to council, yeah, you should, if you
Okay,
want to
look-
do that.
let's take a vote.
I'm not pressuring you, but.
Let's make a motion. Somebody make a motion.
I'll
I
make the
move we move
motion.
this on to council.
Okay.
Got me.
He got you, you seconded it.
All right.
And Gary,
Works for me.
and Gary
Motion,
made the
second.
motion,
Oh,
Morel seconded it.
thank you.
And
Any
this would-
further discussion?
This would be along with the brief definition of collector streets.
Yes.
Thank
add
Include the definition.
Collector street definition, correct.
Okay, let's take a roll call vote.
Okay, Pop,
Yes.
Morel,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Tingary,
Yes.
Shadle,
Yes.
Murad,
Yes.
Richardson,
Yes.
Buckler,
Yes.
Barnett.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Now, the next thing is citizens' comments. Anybody would care to address the planning commission? And nobody's rushing up for that. So we'll move around for liaison reports. Environmental.
Just a reminder, the Environmental Committee will be operating its bike corral. We've had so much discussion about bicycling tonight that I'm sure that the commission and those watching at home can't wait to go to the art bash on their bike and let the Environmental Committee take care of their bike. That's June 13th. So be there, be square.
DDA?
I was at the Wednesday, May 13th meeting, and one of the things under that opened the meeting was Walter Deeb was there and talking about their company, Carrot. And what it is a program, it's an app, and I am so not computer anything. So this is kind of hard. It rewards and counts steps. So you can potentially get after so many steps, you can get a cup of coffee or a slice of pizza at merchants that are plugged in to this program. And they're talking that merchants' licenses would start at $2 a day. And there's even a pickup. When you drive past a business, it will trigger, if there's Wi-Fi there, it'll trigger a count. So you can be aware that a business is offering free something with certain number of steps. Anyway. I don't know.
Okay.
It's interesting.
Sounds interesting, yeah.
And the other thing that was
Orwellian.
good with this one was they were talking about some of the Rabina 12-mile projects and the vacancies again. It was the most interesting part of the whole thing was this Carrot program. And this business was started in 2014 and named one of the top 50 new businesses to watch. So that was kind of good. Chamber of Commerce is reporting that their chamber chat will be at the Tri-Community Coalition, and the next blender will be at Amara's on June 3rd. And bouncing back to the meeting previous month that I was coming down with something that night. S&B proposal for flower planting on 12 Mile. There is, they've decided to use wave petunias and as consistency through all of the 38 planters. And their budget proposal is not to exceed $5,000. And of course, Coolidge is not included in that. Part of it is that the tree wells along Coolidge are not irrigated, and it would fall to the businesses to provide water. Unfortunately, everything that I planted 3 years ago on Dorothea is alive and lovely and survived 2 dreadful winters. So that's good. That's it.
Chamber?
Chamber, they're up to 150 members, most they've ever had. They just passed new bylaws. And then there was discussion on the Art Bash, which is the second Saturday in June.
June 13th.
Yeah, June 13th, thank you, I've got it right here. 153 artists are registered this year. They've expanded down to Wakefield. It's gonna go from Buckingham to
Wakefield to
Wakefield this year.
Buckingham. Yep.
So, and they mentioned that last year's like ticket sales, for all the kids' activities was the most they ever had, but it was a beautiful day too. So, and they said that's kind of what they've seen is on the really nice days, they do real good sales with that.
No bouncy houses.
And they swore in some new businesses, Birmingham Data Systems, Evergreen Antiques, Royal Popcorn Supply, and the Twisted Shamrock.
Great.
And that was about it.
Okay. Attended the council meeting on May the 18th. Interesting thing they're going to do, they approved to do a branding study.
Not a
And,
study, they're gonna develop a new city seal.
yep.
So, yep.
And the other item on the agenda was, of course, the budget and, of course, the capital improvement plan that we all recommended to council. All of that was approved, and the new budget was approved for beginning July, whatever it is.
First.
July 1st. So that was the council meeting, pretty much, when they approved the salt, purchase of salt for winter already. So that was council meeting. So I'll run around the room. Mr. Martin Smith?
No, sir.
Mr. Richardson?
I'm kind of on my high horse tonight, so I might as well just keep riding for a few more minutes. Like everybody else, I came to the meeting tonight through a rather hard downpour of rain. And the intersections, several of the intersections between my house and the chambers here were already flooded after less than an hour's worth of rain. We can only anticipate that these kinds of events are going to become more frequent as we go on. I would like for the citizens of Berkeley to start thinking about what we have to do to handle stormwater. More stormwater, it comes down more rapidly, more effectively. Now, I don't mean to imply by my statement that the city is not thinking about this. I know that people in the city administration are thinking about this, but the citizenry itself is going to have to begin to think about it and begin to become more aware of it, because whatever solutions are found are going to cost money and may involve some more changes to the way we usually do business. And as we've seen tonight, change it's difficult to accept. So that's my say on that. I would like for the people of Berkeley to begin to understand what we're faced with and as far as changing weather conditions here in our area of the country.
Thank you. Ms. Powell?
Nothing further.
Mr. Murad?
Nope, I'm good.
Mr. Morel?
I got nothing.
Ms. Shado?
All set.
Ms. Buckler? Mr. Tangari?
I will just add a right on to Mr. Richardson's remarks. I think he's right.
Ms. Vanson?
Nothing tonight, thank you.
I don't have anything further either tonight. I've done a lot of talking tonight. So I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Moved by Mr. Morel, seconded by Mr. Murad. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting's adjourned. Thank you all.